Hey there, everyone. We're live with Leadership for Innovators Spotlight. I'm Emilia Chagas, and I'm happy to be your host. We're bringing you this live interview every other Wednesday, 9 a.m. Pacific Time, noon Eastern Time. And here's the deal, this is all about interaction. We want you to be part of the conversation too. Even if you're watching it afterwards, it's okay to drop your questions, drop your thoughts here. We will comment on them. And this is your chance to have your questions answered, your ideas heard. And all right, let's get to our amazing guest of today. She's Shola Kaye. Welcome, Shola. I'm thrilled to meet you and to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Amelia. It's a real pleasure. Thanks a lot for having me.
Sure. Shola, you guys, is a specialist in communication for diversity and inclusion, author of 2 books, and an award winning TEDx speaker. Shola speaks on workplace communication, in particular for teams that deal with complex information and workplace empathy. Shola has a degree in natural sciences from Cambridge University and background in IT consulting, obtained in New York and London. And yes, she's here with us today. So let's get this rolling. Shola, before we talk about your work, something that I like to ask up front to kick things off is share with us, please, something fun, interesting about you that we cannot find on your LinkedIn page or on your website. What brings you joy?
Thanks for asking, Amelia. And well, before I embarked on my path as a keynote speaker, doing what I do now, I used to be a professional Motown and soul singer. So I would go to people's corporate events, sometimes to weddings, parties, etc. And I'd be singing, Stevie Wonder, Michael Jackson, Diana Ross, all those songs that most of us know pretty well.
Oh
And
my.
yeah, it was good fun. It was good fun.
Yeah, I know that it's not an easy life. I have people in my family with a music background as well. I know that it's a lot of work. People sometimes think it's just about the fun, right? But it's a lot of work being an entertainer like you used to. So thanks for sharing that with us. That's fun. And do you still do music on the side, or not?
No,
Not anymore. This is a past life.
yeah, no, I stopped it for a while, and then just literally this holiday season, I started to do a few gigs for charity. So I just thought it's so much fun, and it's giving other people some pleasure as well. So why
Yeah.
not go back to it? So yeah, I hope to do a little bit more, but just here and there on the side. I'm not going back to it full time, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, but that's fantastic. So now, can you briefly describe to us your professional journey, how it led to your mission, elevating empathy? I think this is so beautiful and so needed right now.
Thanks for asking. Well, I started out my career in the United States. So I was working in a company in Princeton on the Eastern Seaboard, and I was a management consultant. And I had a background in chemistry and sort of academic research, but I didn't know very much about the tech world. And this was a tech consultancy. And I didn't know anything about the business world as well. So it was a real just jump in, do what you can, try not to be embarrassed, and and also I wasn't a very good communicator because at the time, especially in the UK in the sciences, you never get any training in communication. It's all about the academics, the research, and even now, I talk to some people who've got that sort of technical background, and they too confess that they haven't had a lot of experience with
Mhm.
communication. And I tend to feel that communication is like the lubricant of everything. If you can communicate well, if you can ask in the right way, if you can listen, it gets you so much further than if you don't have those skills.
Yeah.
So going back to my early career, so I would sit in meetings, I wouldn't know what to say, I'd be afraid to speak up, and just really felt like a real failure, if I'm perfectly honest. And I had a manager, he was quite young, he was only probably 2 or 3 years older than me. And part of the reason I'm interested in leadership now is because there are so many people out there who want to be excellent managers, but they just, sometimes they're a bit lacking, right? I think
Yeah.
we've all experienced that. So
Mm.
with my manager, the first I knew that he wasn't happy with my performance, he never came to me and said, look, how can we work on this, or what's up?
Mhm.
How can I support you? But one day I just got asked to go to the managing director's office, and then my
Mhm.
manager was there, the managing director of the whole company, his VP, second in command. And so that day they said to me, look, we're going to put you on probation. We thought your performance hasn't been good enough, and
Out
you
of
can't.
nowhere.
Yeah,
Just out of nowhere. Wow.
it's one of those moments. um, and yeah, I mean, it was kind of a formative moment for my entire career, because I
Yeah.
realized what it can be like for some people, where they really want to perform well, but either they don't have the skills, they haven't found the key to unlock the door for them.
Mhm.
And this is the time where the company, the organization, the team should be really, they saw something in that person, they saw some potential early on. So
Yeah.
this is time to harness that potential, to try and let it grow like a flower, not just to, well, you didn't perform,
Yeah.
stab you, right?
Yeah.
So lucky for me, a colleague, I don't know if they asked her to, or if she did it by herself, but she just gave me some extra support in the mornings for a few weeks. And you know what? If I look back, I don't even know what she did, but just the attention, the
Mm.
interest, the listening was enough to help me find my feet, become a much more productive employee in that organization. And then I ended up staying on, for several more years, rather than
Wow.
the couple of weeks, that they gave me.
Wow.
So that's
That
where
could
my
have gone so bad for these managers, right? How many? I keep thinking how much talent have they wasted before that, right? You went for help, you went after it, but many people don't do that, and it's a true waste. And then go after someone new, the entire hiring process, everything. Wow, yeah, we waste so much time, resources, money by
yeah.
doing the wrong things. So, how can leaders do the right thing? And how do you define empathetic leadership, and how empathetic leadership can help in these situations?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Because empathy is such a big topic at the moment, but it
Yeah.
almost feels, to many people, it feels like, well, shouldn't it be obvious to ask them what's happening, or to listen when they, and that's really what empathy is. Obviously, we talk about putting yourself in the shoes of another person, but
Yeah.
realistically, not everybody has had an experience in their lives where they can just say, oh, yeah, Shola's feeling this right now, let me just kick in with my understanding. We haven't, there's, and if we're
Mhm.
encouraging more diversity in the workplace, we're going to have a more diverse range of experiences, backgrounds, identities, and so on. So when we talk about empathetic behavior, it's not simply just clicking through your memory Rolodex to find where you've been through the same experience. You
Mm.
sometimes have to reach out, you have to ask questions, you have to say, with an attitude of wanting to understand and not being judgmental, I'd love to know, what are you experiencing right now? Or I saw this happen. Where did that behavior come? So rather than let me just, sorry, WhatsApp is just clicking away here. I'd like to say that I'm popular, but it's probably nothing important. Let me just click it off. So yeah, let me turn that off right here. Great.
So it is intentional, right? It's something that leaders should pursue with intent. These moments of reaching out, of uh, asking questions, trying to learn more from people who they work with, and in should we carve this time out, or should we take opportunities as they come?
I think it's both. I think it's both. For example, there's a big movement now. It used to be that you'd have your performance review once a year, or however often they give it to you. And
Yeah.
now there's obviously a big move in many organizations towards, we call it feed forward, giving people feedback in a more spontaneous way, so that
Mm.
it's not this big moment like, oh, make or break. It's more like, yeah, I saw this, why can't you try
Uh-huh.
that? So I think in the same way, um, it's important, especially for if you've got team members who perhaps are introverts or they're not comfortable speaking out in front of everybody. A few years ago, actually, I did worked with a dental organization here in the UK, and we were looking at what makes one dental practice more successful than another.
Mm.
And we were finding that it was often the practice manager who was making time for people to come to them, speak. I've got these hours between this time and that time where you can come to me one to one. We'll have a cup of tea. We're in the UK, but then we'll we'll have a chat. And it's just that ability to speak to somebody one to one, and it be scheduled so that that the time is there.
Mm.
It's
Yeah.
allocated for you to go and speak. So
Yeah.
for some people, they need to see that that there is time for them, that it's okay. Other people, spontaneity, just a little bit here, bit there is enough. But I think it's whether you're the sort of leader who wants to schedule things or whether you're comfortable on the fly, just the fact that it's happening on a regular basis is what's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, regular one-on-one sessions. Gallup Consulting mentions, and they have this study where they compare groups of people who are in one-on-ones with their leaders often, once a week, for example, and groups who are not. And they see that these employees who have these one-on-ones with leaders, they are 5 times more engaged than the other group. So it really is important to take this time. And unfortunately, many times, in many cases, we don't see leaders taking this effort or thinking it's too much. Well, half an hour per person per week, it's too much. Where do I have time to do that? But yeah, but you have to have time to train new people if you lose them, right?
Mhm.
If yeah, turnover is real. So
So
definitely,
true.
I think feedback is crucial in the workplace. And you described to us an experience that was a complete fail. And I think with feedbacks like that, it can be a fail for leaders or it can really make them great leaders. So how can leaders really nail it in terms of great feedback? Is there a framework they can follow, or maybe a framework to stay clear of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because as a speaker, you see different topics are popular,
Mm,
it comes in waves. So while empathy has been a popular topic for me, last year, giving feedback or having difficult conversations was one of or two of the most booked areas that I
mhm,
found. And it's interesting because I think the mark of a good leader is how they give feedback, because
mhm.
everybody, if you look at the top athletes or the top, performers, I even heard that our prime minister had public speaking coaching at a certain stage, right? But everybody, to perform well, it's very few people that don't need feedback.
Yeah.
So everyone needs to know how to do it. And there are many different feedback frameworks. So, one of the ones that used to be popular was, they call it the sandwich, sandwich, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Which used to be like, you give the praise, then you pack in all the
Mhm.
critiques, and then you give a bit of praise at the end. So now people are naturally quite suspicious of that framework. And
Yeah.
I think a good feedback framework will always contain some element of co-creating for the future.
Mm,
Where can we go from here? So one framework that I particularly like is called the I like, I wish, I wonder
mm,
framework. And so you start out by telling the person, obviously what you like, what went well. And then you say, well, I wish that these things would have happened, or I wish that this bit had gone differently. And the beauty of saying I wish is recognizing that you're not in a position to make an absolute statement like, that was atrocious, everyone in the world will hate what you did. The best you can do is say, well, I wish, or I know as the framework that this organization or this team, this is where we are coming from. This is how you perhaps didn't quite match up, or where it was different. So I love I wish because you're claiming what you're saying, you're owning it. You're
Yeah.
not just saying, well, you're wrong as a person. This is wrong.
Hmm.
And then the final part, I wonder, is this opportunity for co-creation where you say, well, I wonder if next time this is what could happen, or I wonder if we could sit down and work on these certain aspects. So going forward, things are different. And I like the sort of gentleness of that framework, but it's also rigorous enough to really help somebody to turn around and see that they're being supported through the feedback process.
That's really helpful. I remembered another framework that I really like and I used for many years. I learned from these consultants in Silicon Valley who train founders and first-time founders specifically with this: when you do these, I feel or I felt that. It relates to I wish, because it puts you as the leader out there. You're also in a position of vulnerability when you're telling someone what they are doing or they should. It's always tricky, right? Because you're pointing fingers and no one wants to be pointed at, no one wants to be in that position. But if you are, as a leader, if you put yourself out there, you share what you felt or what you wish, this is also being vulnerable. Don't you agree? It's a match in that case. It's empathetic. Can we say that?
Yeah, I agree. And the thing about stating your feelings, a lot of people say there's no place for feelings in the workplace. But if you state your feelings, no one can argue with you because we're all
Right.
unique individuals. The way you feel is the way you feel. Someone might say, well, I wouldn't feel that way myself, but they cannot tell you to feel otherwise. So I think there's a certain power as well in sharing feelings just because of that. And also the humility, because part of being an empathetic and inclusive leader is having some degree of humility, recognizing that you are not infallible, you're not perfect, right? So anytime we say something like, well, I feel this, and there's discussion afterwards, not like I feel this way, it's over, but I feel this, but let's talk about it. Again, the let's talk about it is now you're inviting conversation, you're
Yeah.
ready to listen, you're being empathetic.
So feedback has to be a conversation. It's not a one-way street. There's something in particular with feedback that we listen that, oh, if you receive feedback, the answer is always thank you. You don't discuss feedback, you just accept it. But in that way, if you have this I wonder framework and you're building something, you turn the feedback into a conversation, into something that we will build together. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there are times, they'll say when people offer you feedback, and I think this is more when it's unsolicited or people just chipping in and saying, well, you have to make a decision, right? Some people, they're like an angry bear when someone gives them feedback, like, "Whoa," and they just kind of fire back immediately. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think in an ideal world, none of us will be that defensive. We will be able to sit with what we're told. We as individuals, of course, can make a decision. Do I choose to listen to this person and change my behavior because of it? Or do I not rate them enough or not rate what they've said enough that I will just continue or do my own thing? Now, of course, if we're in the workplace and that's your manager that's giving you that feedback, of course, then there's an element of your performance, keeping the manager happy. But I think when it's unsolicited feedback, maybe from a colleague, a peer, someone like that, of course you have a choice. You don't have to accept it. And I remember once I did a talk for a company in Germany. It was a couple of years ago. And I asked somebody, well, what the feedback is that you have? And this guy gave me some feedback. And some of it I thought, yeah, some of it I disagreed with, but I really purposely made myself just say, okay, thank you, I appreciate that. Because otherwise you can just go back, well, when I told, and then they come back, well, and then you just keep going, bing, bing,
Back
bing,
and
bing, bing.
forth.
Yeah, what's the point, right? What's the point?
Yeah.
What you can use, boom, discard the rest. Thank you, I appreciate that. So maybe next time they come back, they've got something very useful. But if you push back immediately, they may never, they're like, right, That's
You're
it.
closing the door.
Yeah,
Definitely. Yeah, I
yeah.
agree. Let's keep doors open in the workplace. I completely agree. That's fascinating. Thanks so much for sharing that, Shola. And there's another topic that I know you talk about, and I'm particularly super interested in, that is psychological safety. And I think 2024 is definitely the year where after so much that has been going on, people were feeling so, insecure in the workplace. And last year, in the previous year too, the quiet quitting and all of that. So, how to engage people? I had this question from another leader the other day. He asked me how to keep this remote team engaged. And it's a set of many things, but I truly believe psychological safety is a foundational rock for that. So, what are these steps for leaders who are looking for that type of environment, to create these environments with their team that people feel safe? And they
Mm.
can do their best. They can be their best versions there.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's interesting because there's obviously a lot of work on psychological safety right now. It's such a huge topic and so important. And there's a couple of different models that I typically share when I'm working with teams. And one model is called the TERA, the Terra framework. And that's from quite a well-known coach called Michael Bungay-Stanier. And he says that this TERA, T stands for team, or he calls it tribe. But in the inclusion world, we try and use not to use the word tribe, right? But
Mhm.
team, first of all, do people feel that they're part of a team? Is there some sort of team environment there? The second one is E, which is expectation. So do people come along feeling that you expect them as a leader to do the best work? You're supportive of them. You want them to
Mhm.
do their best. Because you have some leaders who will be saying things like, right, I need to see you now, or that wasn't good, or they're micromanaging, and they're making people feel like this person wants to just trip me up and they want me to fail. So are
Mhm.
you making sure that people feel that they're nurtured, they're supported, that you expect the best, and you're helping them to achieve the best?
Yeah.
Then you've got R, which is for respect. So some leaders, they feel it's okay to disrespect their team members publicly. And
Mhm.
obviously, it's if once you disrespect someone publicly, they're very unlikely to feel safe in your
Yeah.
presence again. So making sure that you don't do that. And then the A stands for autonomy. So are you somebody who is micromanaging? You're telling them, bossing them this way, bossing them that way, or do you allow people to have enough autonomy that they feel that they're really able to make an
Yeah.
individual input into what they're doing? So the TERA framework, I think, is really handy and it's very easy to remember.
Yeah.
Um, then another framework is from the work of, I forget his name, Dr. Timothy, it will come back to me, but he
Mhm.
has 4 stages of psychological safety. So the first stage is inclusion safety. Do people feel included? Second
Mhm.
is learner safety. Is it okay to learn or to show you don't know something in front of the team? The
Yeah.
third one is contributor safety. So do you feel it's okay to contribute or to suggest, okay, let's change this process, and then finally, challenger safety. Is it okay to challenge the status quo?
Mhm.
And I had a client once, they were in California, and they had said to me, oh, we want you to come out and we want you to run this workshop on, and they were saying, well, we did the pulse surveys and we found that people in our company, they feel very safe, they feel very included, they feel inclusion safety, but they feel that they cannot push back on any of our procedures, or you know give feedback
Mhm.
to leaders or senior leaders. And so they said, we want you to come and talk to our leadership team about this. So then as I started to work with them and we tried to put the contract together, no, this is the way our lawyers do it. Oh, well, when I travel, no, this is so it was clear the way that they were, so like everything was so locked in that
Mhm.
I, as an external consultant, could not even push back. So how is an employee supposed to feel? Like, they're not going to have challenger safety, they're not going to have contributor safety. So, and then eventually the deal fell through. I never worked with them in the end. So
Wow.
just these things, it was just so obvious why they were having these problems in the first place.
Yeah, but it's so hard to change, right? I think one thing for them is to realize this is the first step, isn't it? To understand why you're having those sort of problems, but then to move and to change culture, to change behavior. I do that as a leadership consultant as well as a growth consultant. Many times we see companies that want to implement the growth methodology, which entails taking risks, running tests, failing, but they stop right there. The amount of failure they're used to is next to zero. So they're always doing the same things. They are not taking risks. They are not shooting high enough to grow. And yeah, I think that's really really problematic, isn't it? And pursuing psychological safety can have real business results in that sense, in the sense that you allow people to become more creative, to bring solutions, to think outside of the box. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think it's so true. And that makes me think of another client I was working with, also in the States. And what we were looking at is during the period of COVID, where everyone was working remotely, they were wondering if innovation was taking a hit from people not being able to be in the same room, brainstorm, and so on and so forth.
Mhm.
And I was looking at an article, and it was talking about when who is it hardest to contribute, who is it
Mhm.
hardest for to contribute during a brainstorming session. And typically it's people who are maybe they're pessimists. So if you're in a very kind of upbeat environment and you're naturally a pessimist or more of a kind of risk averse, those sort of people probably will not share, because then they'll be accused of being a downer, or
Mhm.
oh, why can't you just be more positive, this could work. But we need those people for risk
Yeah.
management, right? So that's so important. Also, anybody who perhaps is more marginalized or who perhaps isn't from the mainstream, those individuals typically are not encouraged to, or it's more risky for them, let's say,
Mhm.
to participate in
Yeah.
brainstorming and innovation type sessions. And then also people who are introverts who naturally wouldn't. So, if we're thinking about psychological safety and we're thinking about innovation, creativity, how can we make sure that we enable all those individuals to be able to play a role? And if they're not right now, what is it that's stopping them?
And that's the role of the leader, for sure. That's something for leaders to act on, to think about. Wow, this is fantastic, Shola. I'm immensely grateful for your generosity, for sharing your knowledge, your experience with us. And before we wrap things up, I really want you to say a few words for aspiring leaders. What would you say to people who are just starting off in their leadership careers? What should they do next to become
Oh,
empathetic leaders?
lovely question. I'd say be curious and be courageous. Curious to understand what makes people tick, why they do what they do, to stop yourself making assumptions and to get closer to people, because often it's those hooks, those relationships that really will inspire loyalty in you
Yeah.
as a leader. And then courageous to ask those questions, courageous to be prepared to feel what somebody else is going through as you learn more about them, and courageous enough to be humble, to not have to put like a screen between you and the people that you're working with because you're afraid of being seen. So I think if you can start with those two, as well as obviously all the technical knowledge and all the other things that
Yeah.
come with it, then yeah, I think you'll be on a good path to success.
Wow, that's so helpful. Thank you so much. And before we conclude, are there any upcoming projects, initiatives? How can people get in touch with you?
Thank you for asking. Well, I mean, this quarter, typically, my team and I are really focused on International Women's Month and inclusion, and the theme this year is inclusion. So, if anyone's interested in inclusion, psychological safety, creating a speak up culture, then please get in touch. And then my web address is sholakaye.com. So there's plenty of content there. Feel free to go and have a look, or just reach out on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from you.
Oh, that's amazing. Again, thanks so much, Shola. Thanks everyone for being here with us, either live or if you're watching afterwards, you're also super welcome here anytime. Our next Spotlight, Leadership for Innovators Spotlight, will be in January 24th, featuring Manpreet Dhillon. She's a leadership coach and advisor for over 20 years, and we will have amazing, I'm sure, amazing conversation, because the topic we'll be discussing is leadership and forgiveness. Yes, not very common to see those two together, so I'm super looking forward to it, and trust me, you don't want to miss it. So yeah, looking forward to seeing you again. Shola, again, thank you so much for joining, and thanks everyone.
Thank you so much, Amelia. It's a real pleasure. I enjoyed this so much. Take care, everyone. Get in touch.